think Ellie or Fred were consulted. I have to verify that. And I have a very, very uncomfortable feeling about the way this is starting off, that
All right. Thank you. I'd like to call to order Environmental Matters Committee meeting for November 18th. And Alderman Arnett and myself are present. Alderwoman Tierney is not, but we are going to get started here. And let's see, the agenda we also need to modify. So could I get a motion to amend the agenda?
We're amending the agenda to add the 3 appointments.
Yes.
I move that we amend the agenda to add reveal of 3 appointments.
All right, I'll second that. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. All right. And
Move approval of the minutes.
thank you. I'll second that motion. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, so then we have a presentation from, is Dr. Nash here? We have a development update.
I am here.
Thank you, Dr. Nash.
All right.
Looks like a lot of updates this month.
Yep. First of all, of course, the Spa Road facility, we have an application for that. And so for the Public Works facilities, it's under review. We have the FSD approved, but we are reviewing the FCP. Actually, I think Tom might have approved that yesterday.
So can you tell me what the mnemonics are? The SCP?
Oh, sorry, the forest stand delineation.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Yep, and the forest conservation plan is under review, along with the site design and the special exception. So we're trying to figure out when that can go to Planning Commission. Okay. It has gone to a Planning Commission work session.
Dr. Nash, question about that. Not the project itself necessarily, but at what stage does staff notify, for example, the Severn River Commission of projects that are in their watershed? I'm the ex officio on there. I know one of their duties is to kind of keep an eye on some development issues as it pertains to the creek. So just wondering if that happens normally, and if not, if they could be sent a notice.
Well, would Jackie Guile notify them since we're sending her plans now?
That may need to get worked out by city manager.
Okay, because we wouldn't notify them as part of our agency review.
No, yeah, well, that's like kind of my question, because I know at some point you notify alderpersons about various projects and the other agencies.
We always
saying
notify the alderperson.
Okay, so there's nothing in the process for notifying the Severn River Commission currently, I guess.
Correct.
Right. Okay. All right. All right. I'll make a note of that, because we may need to figure out a process. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Sure. Next up, 101-103 Annapolis Street is going to Planning Commission next week, or tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow, not next week.
Tomorrow?
No, that's not right, is it? Or is there?
I don't know.
11/19. Yeah, there is a Planning Commission meeting tomorrow.
Bummer, because we got ECA tomorrow night too.
Okay.
I don't remember seeing that.
I can't. Let me look at my calendar real quick, because I kind of feel like, no, it is tomorrow. Gosh, that snuck up on me.
Everything does these days. It seems.
Yeah, I was going to say, you been doing anything else?
106-108 Annapolis Street, we're reviewing the demolition permit for that project.
These are 2 separate ones in West Annapolis, right?
That's right. The Kitty Academy, you may remember them. They were applying on Forest Drive for a new building. They've found an existing building on West Street that they are retrofitting. So they're in now for site design.
Oh, good. you think that'll work out better for them?
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
There's a few issues still with the site itself, but I think we'll be able to work those out pretty easily. So.
Mm-hmm.
And Parole Place, we have revisions in for review. That's the project at Old Solomons and Forest, where Sinfern Terrace is.
Yeah.
Right.
Primrose School at Hilltop. And
On the parole one, just a question about that one. What kind of, are they significant revisions? Are they still proposing generally the same development?
It's generally the same. I'll have to see if I need to update that project description. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at it yet.
Okay.
I will double check on that.
So they're undergoing, looks like they just haven't received FCP approval yet. It says FCP revisions.
For Parole Place, they have FSD approval, but not FCP approval, correct? And we'll have to see how long it's been since their traffic study. I feel like it's been a long time since they did their traffic study. So,
is that a planned development?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
That's a pretty large chunk of forest there.
Yeah.
I have to look up those plans. It's been a while.
Primrose School is going at Hilltop and Spa. We have the forest stand delineation approved, and that's pretty much where we are right now. That working on, we have gotten the rest of their plans application in, so we're working on getting that out for agency review.
Okay, yeah, and thank you for sending the forest stand delineation for that project. It looks like the only resource there's a relatively small forest, but there are some large trees. That was about it. Specimen trees and significant. Do you know what the general footprint is of this project? Is it going to take up most of the site, or do you think they'll be able to stick to the open fields?
I have seen a preliminary drawing, and they were protecting some of the specimen trees, but I mean, I don't know. I'd have to look at it again, see what they've recently submitted, see if it's changed at all.
Okay.
And those are all the updates.
Thank you. Any specific questions about any other questions from the committee?
No, thank you as always. It's good to get caught up on these things. Does this go to all of the council members, this update? I
send it to some city staff, and I send it out on my listserv. So if they're subscribed to the planning and zoning listserv, they get it, but I don't send it specifically to the all aldermen list. Yeah, I wonder how many projects are in wards that aren't on this committee, so might not necessarily know. I don't know. What do you think about the idea of just sending out routinely to the all aldermen's list? I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, it's a very valuable document, and we can, I mean, we don't get enough emails, so.
Right. I always send it to, I have a list of city staff, public works, also Anne Arundel County staff, and AACPS. I send it, so it wouldn't be a problem for me to add the council to that email.
I like that idea. If it's not too much trouble, I think it's a good gesture. And if they take advantage of it, fine. And if they don't, that's their loss.
Okay, I will do that.
Thank you.
It is posted online, I know.
Yeah, but like the rest of us, it can slip by.
Yeah. So Nash, before you leave, could you do you have an update you can give us on the maritime
Oh,
the
yeah.
task force that was set up.
I never saw who's on it.
Well, really? Okay, because yes, we're having a meeting on Friday with the task
No,
force.
that brought my attention. It's like, whoa. Eileen and I have passed text messages over the last week or so. I've got, I'm being pressed by ECA to get the list, and I just don't have it. Who got on there for the environment?
We have Amy Clements, we have Jeff Holland, and we have Alice Estrada from the Maritime Museum.
Okay. What about
We have
Kate Fritz?
I believe we have 3 residents from Eastport, Vic Pasco,
That's trouble.
and I am blanking on the others, but I will ask Eileen to
Probably
send you.
Patrick Shaughnessy, was
Oh,
he on?
yes.
Yeah, so it would really be good to get that list. I've got several urgent emails from the president of the Civic Association saying, what gives? So
Well,
I'd like to.
Yeah, I'd like to make a suggestion. I think that, well, I was going to suggest maybe we can get a quick update at the next council meeting. Just, but that might be fine just to do it over email, as long as we can just get notified who's on that and what the tentative schedule is.
Okay, I'll ask Eileen to coordinate with David and just to send an update email
That
out.
would be great.
Okay.
And Rules Committee is supposed to get updates, also.
Right.
I know the Planning Commission as well as the Rules.
Right.
Okay.
I don't think we'll need you for anything else, just because the small cell legislation is still at the Planning Commission, so we're probably going to just postpone that.
Okay. They did vote on it, but the findings aren't finalized yet. So I think they will be tomorrow night.
I had dropped out because of other things. Where are we on the revision to the APF for traffic? I know Bob.
They approved the findings and I sent them to Jacqueline Lee.
Okay, so that'll get on what committee's agenda? It'll get on Rules agenda, right?
It should go to, has it had a public hearing yet? in
Oh,
City
maybe.
Council?
Yeah, maybe it needs that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, as long as somebody's minding the store.
Sure, Jacqueline Lee is on the case.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Dr. Nash.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to jump into the appointments,
Okay.
so we don't keep these folks too long. And first on the list I have anyway is Miss Allison Colden here, or Miss Ratovich here to speak to that.
Hi, this is Allison Colden. I'm on.
Oh, hi.
Hi, Allison. Welcome. And so I apologize for the schedule, if there's any scheduling confusion but I thank you for coming to the meeting. So what we like to do is just hear from some of the appointees, your background, what your interest is in the particular committee or commission. And we may have a few questions for you, and then we'll recommend recommendation to the full council here. So so please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Great. Well, Alderman Savage, great to see you. Alderman Arnett as well. Thank you so much for having me on this afternoon. My name is Allison Colden, resident of Ward 7, and professionally and by training, I am a fisheries ecologist. So that's where my passion and connection to the environment really lies. I currently work for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation at their Annapolis headquarters office. And my interest in the commission was really sparked by a conversation with one of my neighbors. She serves on another commission for City of Annapolis. And we were really just sitting around the fire pit one evening talking about Annapolis. And I'm a relatively new resident to the city. I moved here 4 years ago to take a job with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. And since moving to Annapolis, have just really become enamored with, the connection to the water, the beautiful spaces, beautiful places we have here in Annapolis, and really looking for a way to serve and try and take what skills that I may have professionally and apply them in my community in the most selfish way. My professional life involves, I know some of you are involved in Chesapeake Bay restoration work as well, so this will be familiar to you, but it's a big, daunting task, which can be pretty overwhelming at times. And so I'm really interested in doing some things on the more local level where I can feel like I can help move the needle, knowing that in my professional life, the cleanup of the Chesapeake Bay overall is a huge task that's going to happen very, very slowly. But I think that there are concrete things that we can do in our local communities to move that ball forward. So that's really my interest in applying to serve on the Environmental Commission. I think, my connection to fisheries and water quality is pretty strong in my background, but I do look forward to the possibility of learning more about development, stormwater management, some of those other things that I'm familiar with from working at CBF, but also, are not my primary area of expertise. I also was just today accepted to the Watershed Stewards Academy for an interim. So, hopefully if I were to, get your nomination and your appointment, it would sort of go along in tandem with that, building up that expertise at the same time. So I appreciate your consideration.
Well,
go ahead, Alderman Arnett.
I was going to say, we appreciate you volunteering, and
Yes.
I think your background is fabulous. We're happy to welcome you aboard. It is on the strength of all of our volunteers that an incredible amount of work gets done in the city. So I'm certainly delighted and will vote favorably.
Yeah, and thank you very much, as Alderman Arnett said, for your interest. And I think you'll find this board this commission has a wide array of environmental issues that they look at with a number of different subcommittees. And so I'm sure you'll find a place where you can help. And I think it's great to have another Ward 7 rep on there. So thank you. And can I ask who your neighbor was? Was it Cynthia?
Kara Fleck-Plewinski.
Oh, okay. What board is Kara on?
She advises on transportation. I'm not sure exactly which board it is.
Okay.
She's on the transportation board.
Gotcha. Excellent. And yeah, your background is just excellent. Sorry, we're looking through this now. We just didn't get these till late, but
Sure. And I'm happy to answer any other questions or go into any more specifics if you're interested.
I think that's all. I mean, that's all I have really. I think it looks really phenomenal here. I
would make a motion that we recommend favorably to the City Council for this appointment.
All right, I'll second that motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 The ayes have it. All right.
Thank you so much.
Hillary will take good care of you from here on out.
Thanks.
That's right.
So,
Yes, Ms. Radovich.
Jackie?
Oh, Jack, I couldn't hold that.
Hi, I didn't realize my mic, I could unmute myself, but when will Allison be considered by City Council, or confirmed? Would that be at the next meeting or on Monday or not that soon?
Hillary, do you know?
Yes, they will be on Monday's agenda on the consent calendar.
Okay, good.
All right, so the next meeting is coming up on the 25th at 7 p.m.
Yeah, and I guess Allison, before you go, I guess I do one other question. I guess what do you have any projects in mind, or are you just?
It's the 23rd, by the way.
Oh, the 23rd. Thank you, Tia.
The 23rd?
Yes.
the council meeting is the 23rd. The AEC.
Oh, the council meeting is the 23rd. Yeah, the AEC meets next on the 25th. That's what I was referring to.
Please believe us, we're not usually this disjoint, but we're getting a lot of things flowing in at the last minute.
And I'll send you an email with all that information, Ms. Colden.
Yeah, so Ms. Colden, just wanted to ask more about if you had any specific projects or things you'd like the commission to take on, and do you have anything in mind currently, or are you looking for focusing on issues related to, or is your background really is having to do with bay restoration? And granted, a lot of these things are connected, but the commission deals a lot with development comments. They deal a lot with transportation in terms of like electrifying our fleet, that kind of thing, and stormwater. Is there any particular area that you were hoping to contribute more in, or?
Yeah, so I wanted to spend a little bit more time getting to know the breadth of the commission, which you just laid out really nicely. I think, I do have an interest in working more on stormwater and development, just because those are areas that I want to sort of gain some more knowledge in what's going on from, the Annapolis perspective as the resident side, not the professional side. And other than that, I'm happy to look for opportunities for where my specific expertise can come in to play and be helpful. I do have a specific interest. I do spend a lot of time at the Ellen Moyer Nature Park, Back Creek. And so that's one, got a special place in my heart. Don't have anything specific in mind for that, but it's obviously a place that has its own challenges, has projects going on right now. So I am particularly interested in following those.
Great. Well, thank you again. And I guess we can move on now to... Did
we vote?
Yes, we already voted.
Okay. All right.
So we'll move on to, let me see if I can find the next one. Well, I see Mr. Hansen, so let's move on to that one.
Okay.
So this is, again, Mr. Jeremy Hansen applying from Ward 5, applying to fill a vacancy on the Environmental Commission. So Mr. Hansen, we've same kind of questions. Would you like to provide any kind of introduction and why you're interested and what you're looking to focus on the commission?
Sure. And thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee and the city staff for considering my application and finding time on the crowded agenda for us on pretty late notice. I've been working in Annapolis since 2012, but like many other Marylanders, I'm a transplant from somewhere else. I grew up in Nebraska, a state where we invented Arbor Day because otherwise there weren't enough trees. So coming out here, I just fell in love with the nature and the bay, the ocean, just all of it. The whole state's just gorgeous. And I've always loved nature and the solitude and beauty it has, but I also love amenities and living in a city. So Annapolis was kind of like just the perfect match, I've learned. I earned my Master of Public Policy from Maryland, College Park,
Go Terps.
Back in 2012. Yeah, go Terps. Environmental policy, and I got a certificate in environmental finance as well. But since then I've been at the Chesapeake Bay Program Office in Eastport. And most of my time and effort has been spent on these panels of experts that look at various best management practices and assess their ability to reduce nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment loads to Chesapeake Bay. So my professional experience is more water quality, stormwater, agriculture, that non-point source pollution and watershed management at that larger scale, conceptual level. But really, a larger part of my job is then also taking those reports and then working with the 6 states, DC, federal partners, Chesapeake Bay Commission partners, and everyone in that partnership to then understand and accept those scientific recommendations. So that's definitely, I feel like that's definitely aged my experience in consensus-based decision-making in dog years. So that's, if you've ever worked with the Chesapeake Bay program, you probably understand what I mean. I love it there. Consensus takes a lot of effort, as I'm sure most people on this call know. Mm-hmm. So, that's my professional experience. But I think more importantly for work on the commission at a local level, I've just always been an inquisitive person, love to listen, I love to learn. My mom was a public librarian, And whenever I had a school project growing up, she'd bury me with these large piles of research, documentation. So I learned to love taking deep dives into any subject I was tackling. And my father was a Lutheran pastor, is a Lutheran pastor. And so when you see and hear the things that occur day to day in any congregation, you also then learn the value and power of empathy and listening as a member of the community around you. So I look forward to bringing all that experience to the commission, especially since, on a personal note, my wife and I are expecting our first child in January, and we're really committed to setting our roots down here in the city long term. So really excited for the opportunity to contribute what I can to the work of the commission and the voice that the commission brings to the city, so that all members of our community can benefit and enjoy its natural environment for generations.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for all that, and again for your interest. And you have some. It's good to see. I think I knew this, but I'd forgotten that you had worked with the Chesapeake Research Consortium. I was also a Bay Fellow, but back from 2001 to 2003, I guess it was. So definitely, it was a very good program, and I like your references for Rich Batiuk and Jeff Sweeney, also great individuals. So definitely, and I'm glad I know you've been attending the commission meetings for a while, so glad that we've been able to get to this point.
Yeah, I started showing up last summer, I think.
Yeah. So I see a hand from Deputy City Manager Jackie Gould.
Yes, I just wanted to add for Jeremy, you mentioned that he's been coming and contributing significantly to the commission since last summer, but both of these candidates really add to the depth of knowledge for the commission. We've got a lot of people with land use experience, some power and energy experience, some general stormwater and land pollution experience. But having someone from the Bay program and from CBF is a nice tie to these organizations and information they bring. And then Jeremy's PMP and water quality, stormwater expertise and non-point source pollution ties in a lot with my background, but it's really great for the commission. And we don't have what I consider like a naturalist, like Allison, a fisheries ecologist, which is great for our ecological uplift and habitat creation, part of our resiliency planning. So both of these candidates really bring value to the commission.
Yeah, absolutely. Alderman Arnett, did you have anything you wanted to?
Well, I find both of these candidates to be grossly overqualified for the position, so I don't think we should put them. Now, I am appreciative of getting, I was just sitting here thinking of the quality of the kind of people we're getting and how fabulous that is. And I would make a motion that we recommend approval to the council.
I will second that motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Hanson.
Thank you for volunteering and being here.
Yeah, I really look forward to, I'll see both of you at the next, hopefully at the next Environmental Commission meeting. So take care. And next up on the agenda, we have an appointment to the Conservancy Board. We have Ms. Frost, Linda Frost. Is she on the Zoom call here? Or do you have more information for us, Hillary?
No, I know she was
on, but I think we lost her. So.
Okay.
I was going to say, I know she was scheduled to be here and had replied yes, but yeah. She was recommended by the chairwoman, Ms. Ogburn, sent her to me, and she applied back in August. You all have her resume in front of you, but she has 20 years of land conservation experience, and I was pleased to see in her application discussion of equitable access and public water access, which are two of the hot issues for that board right now. Mm-hmm. I have spoken with her, and she seems eminently qualified. She also came to us by way of Eric Lashinsky, our new comprehensive planner. He is one of the people who recommended her. And I also noted in her resume her rowing experience. I thought that was a good. She's somebody who's coming at this from the water as well as the land. So
Again, grossly overqualified, but don't we usually require 55 years of experience? Again, I'm sorry we didn't get to speak to her, but on paper she looks fabulous, and given all the recommendations you just cited, I would be happy to make a motion that we recommend favorably to the council for this appointment.
I'll second that. And yeah, I was hoping to ask her some question about some of her, I see she was on the West Virginia Land Trust. As someone who likes to go out there backpacking, I'd like to chat with her at some point.
If you'd like, I'll invite her to your next meeting. Even if you're willing to move her forward today, she can come to your next meeting just to meet you if you'd like.
That'd be great, yeah.
More if she would like, I think.
Yes, if it's not too inconvenient for her. But yeah, I don't have a problem moving forward with this today. No. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Hillary,
thank you.
What a great crop.
Yeah.
We're delighted.
Excellent.
It strengthens things.
Yeah, and thanks for sending these to us. And
sorry for
glad we get on the agenda. That's okay. Happens to all of us. All right. So next up on the agenda, we have O2120 and O2220. It's the two land conveyance properties. But again, just I think because of, I guess we discussed this a little bit over email. As we're in the minutes, at the last meeting, we did talk about wanting to get some more input from staff on the language. Not necessarily from law office, Ms. Leonard. I think we were, but we just wanted to get. I know the committee was talking about. Just wanted to make sure the stormwater was even feasible for that site, and I had an interest in trying to figure out some additional language, perhaps, where if the stormwater does prove to be just not feasible for this project, that maybe we could have. They would some commitment to plant some trees or some other kind of landscaping that would have a water quality benefit, especially on the second of the ordinances, O22, where it's really only it's a narrow strip of land, only a few feet wide, where the other one, it's actually city property that would be a larger parcel that would be selling to the property owner to convert into parking space. But in any case, both owners have expressed willingness to do more. And I really, I hate the idea of postponing this again, but I don't think there's any time urgency, and I would like to try to get this right. It sounds like I'd like to get some input from the Public Works Stormwater staff to see if this is even, because again, if it's not feasible to put in any kind of management in the back of the property, then I don't think we should necessarily put it in there. Maybe we can figure out a different way to word it.
Mr. Chair, did I see an email from Matt Waters or something from Matt Waters? Maybe it came from you, Takia, speaking to this?
He did, but I don't know if he wants a part of the deliberations today or not. It was just kind of his quick analysis, but I think it would be useful to perhaps get him to the next meeting or the Public Works Director, just to chat a bit more about it. At least that was the feeling I got from you, Alderman Arnett, and Alderwoman Tierney, is that you wanted to kind of refine the language a bit more. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I do think you're also correct in characterizing at least the one potential property owner we talked to seemed quite amenable to working this out. So I think it's a question of us getting this worked out. so we can incorporate that in the legislation and move it forward. I like you, I hate postponing, but I think we do need to have that specific language. And maybe Mr. Waters here to speak to us about the feasibility of the stormwater management.
Yeah, because I really don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill, and this is all this considered a molehill, but we also, every molehill counts downtown since the water quality. So, but Ms. Leonard, did you have any other update? I know you were reaching out to the other property owner. Do you have any other updated thoughts?
I know I think it's 113 is very willing, the one with the bigger strip, is very willing to do what needs to be done. But I think he probably needs to work more closely with either Mr. Waters or someone else from Public Works to see what's feasible out there. The property owner of 115 seemed open to the possibility, but hadn't sort of indicated to me any sort of action she was going to take at this point to move forward. Whereas the 113 property owner said he would be willing to actually move forward and do actions as needed. I think it would be a good idea for Public Works to actually go out to the site and look at it to at least get a better idea. I'm not sure if they've actually gone out and looked at it like in person. And then based on what they find, I'm happy to tweak the deeds as needed. I do think we'll probably, and I'm not an engineer, but I think we'd probably have more success with something on the 113 parcel, whereas the 115 parcel's very small, and I'm not sure if you could actually get a stormwater system in there or not.
All right. Yeah, and maybe some of us from the committee could at least try to join, and I could at least try to maybe join staff and Ms. Guile. And Ms. Guile, do you think you'd be able to help coordinate any of this in terms of? Because I know, given that Mr. Adams used to work for you, the other question we had besides stormwater was if these sites, especially after if they improve them with parking spots, if they'd even have room for to plant some trees. Because I do think, at least in my mind, that's kind of the backfall if they can't put stormwater management on the site, because it may not make sense. And then could they at least plant a few trees?
Yeah, like Ashley saying, one parcel is so small, we have to consult with Matt. I can work with Matt to see, if it makes sense even, and if not, if Brian thinks it's a big enough spot to put trees, as far as the root system, et cetera, which was probably more likely, and that's another way to absorb and filter pollutants and absorb water and filter pollutants by planting trees. And we need areas to plant trees, so that might work out.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
All right. So
and that was the thrust of our discussion was, as a city, whenever there's an opportunity for us to push forward stormwater management and tree canopy, we ought to take advantage of it. And again, at least one owner isn't opposed, and the other seemed to me to be very actively in favor of whatever we can do. So I think it's up to us on the city to perform to help get this through.
Yeah, and Ms. Leonard, maybe I'll send you. I wrote up some just rough language for your consideration in that, because again, I don't want to necessarily, if we put the language in this ordinance regarding the requirement to put stormwater management, I don't necessarily, if it proves to be infeasible, then I don't want to necessarily hold their feet to the fire on that. I think we need to kind of put in some flexibility for the property, and if we can require the property owner to work with Public Works or a deputy city manager to figure out what, if anything, could be done on the property. I think that might be a good way forward.
Yeah, sure. Send me language. I always like language to work off of instead of trying to come up with it on my own. So anything you want to send it my way.
Thank you. And it's not superseding anything you sent. It's just, I was trying to figure out something in addition to kind of list some examples and then what could be done in if the former proves infeasible. So anyway, yes, I will send that. Thank you. And I guess we will, we'll just postpone this. And,
yes, so I move we postpone pending actions on the part of several different city agencies to give us a review of what's feasible there on the property, and then we can offer an amendment to the legislation.
Yeah, I'll second that postponement. And all those in favor of the postponing, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And yeah, again, and Ms. Guild, if you could, I really do want to make sure we get this wrapped up at the next meeting. I don't want to drag these folks on or spend any more of our time on this than we need to. So, Ms. Guild, if you have a chance between the next few weeks to review what Ms. Leonard has put together to see if, just from an environmental perspective, like if there's something else you think we should maybe put in there, or that Brian or Matt. And then Ashley, did you send that to any other staff, or you just put that together?
I will have to check who I sent that to, but I can send it. I think I sent it to someone in Public Works. I'm not sure if I sent it to Deputy City Manager Guild, but I'll resend it out to everyone.
Okay. But yeah, I think like you've said, it makes sense. I think we need to just see the site in person and see what might work. Okay, so if we, I guess we'll just have to see if we can get an appointment set up in the next few weeks, and hopefully just take half an hour out there, see what's there. Okay, so moving on, we had the small cell legislation. I'll again entertain a motion to postpone that since it's still at the Planning Commission.
So moved.
All right.
That and the two resolutions.
Yes. So it sounds like we'll get their findings by the next meeting.
I do want to say on that when this was before us a few years ago, actually many now, one of the issues that delayed the legislation at that time was, I believe it was Verizon who came in and was asking for these small cell installations, but they didn't have any desire to share it with other cell companies. And that's why we found unfavorably towards this effort, because we can't have every single pole taken up. I noticed in the illustration they said that this is a new generation of small cell, but it sure looks like the old generation to me. We had been promised at that time that there would be a fifth generation, which would be much smaller. The other thing that came up at the time was that the units down at the bottom of the pole actually contained fairly high voltage, and there was a worry about kids getting up and climbing on it and so forth, and possibility of electrocution. I'm not sure that's been resolved. So when this comes back to us from the Planning Commission, I think we'll need to get some expertise in to help us ferret out all of those items. And we'll need something from the Office of Law about whether these are municipal powers or whether we're giving a monopoly to each of the individual self-company vendors.
Yeah, very good questions. And we can certainly add them to our list for the next meeting, unless Ms. Leonard wanted to jump in now. But
I don't think I'm prepared to answer that quite
okay.
yet. But I will.
Okay.
I will send it to the city attorney for his thoughts.
Just give him a heads up for next time. Yeah, Ms. Kyle.
Also, historic preservation should be consulted. I know when we were talking to BPD about light poles, and we had talked about 5G and other sensor type of things to attach to the pole. They had all sorts of questions, and didn't seem favorably disposed to putting a large unit on every pole. We're concerned about how much of an apparatus you would see on a pole? Would it be on every pole? What would be the distance, from the ground, the visibility, et cetera? So it should include Roberta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. I wonder if these are referred to them at all.
Should we, Mr. Chair, it sounds to me like we need to, for the last one, we need to invite Brian Adams and Matt Waters at a minimum. And for this one, it sounds to me like we need to invite Roberta, Office of Law. Do we need any other technical support? And are these things that we should hand off to Ms. Green to make sure we have those people at the next meeting now that we're postponing it?
Yeah, Ms. Green, could you send out some invitations for this legislation for the next meeting? Did you give that list of Roberta and the Office of Law?
Yes, from Planning and Zoning for the historic district. And the historic district, Alderman Budge really did have a lot of angst over this the last time, so I'm not surprised. On the other hand, I want one on the pole outside of my house because my cell phone service is terrible. So I'm volunteering for one.
The other question I had for Ms. Gata, and I see your hand up, is a tree. I liked the wording in general. I thought it did a good job for requiring public notification, because that was one question I had from the constituents. But the one question I have perhaps for next time would be trees. Like, if it looks like these aren't going to impact the trees, but does the city arborist have any kind of power in this sense to be able to shift the placement of these if need
Well,
be?
we should ask Brian about, the placement and how it affects the trees. I mean, so this would be another one to bring Brian in on.
Okay.
You may see some pushback from some residents that don't want them outside of their home. I know I have not done research on this. I've just read a little bit about health effects, from high voltage and from these units. There's some causal link between certain kinds of cancers and other health problems. So that's something I haven't looked into a lot, but I can do some preliminary background research for you if you would like me to.
Yeah.
But I know some neighbors, I know some people have mentioned this to me in the past, that they may not want them.
I want to know at my neighbor's house, not mine.
Yeah, I think Ruth Berlin, who's with the Pesticide Network, mentioned to me they can actually interfere with small electric appliances like pacemakers.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so I'll look into it.
How can they possibly be approved then?
I don't know, if there's validity to those arguments or not. Yeah. But I can do some background research.
It's good to be prepared, to see if there are any impacts. But I guess the question for Ms. Leonard would be, do you know if these poles, I'm assuming these poles are owned by the utilities, even though they're in our right-of-way.
BG&E poles.
Most of them are owned by BG&E at this point, and I think we sold the remainder of ours to BG&E at some point. So I would say there's very few city-owned utility poles at this moment.
So the one question, I guess, for you or whoever from the law next time would be, does the city even have a right to say no if these are not even our poles? Does the city or the resident have a right? And I know we still have the right to permit, and I guess therefore we'd have a right to deny. But I guess the one question would be on what grounds. I don't know. This is all.
Well, these fees are substantial. There's a $4,000, $2,100. Who gets those? BG&E or us?
That's fees to us, I assume, because it's in our fee schedule.
So then would the company then rent the space from BG&E? I don't know. Well, I'm not sure we care about that side of it, but except that our cell phone bills will all go up. But I think we should probably try to get as much information. We're surely going to be asked by our constituents, is this going to, pop my popcorn in the cupboard or wreck my pacemaker? And, where do these fees, who gets these fees? And once we get them, where do they go? So when these are installed and those fees are paid, does that go into the general fund? Does that go into some part of public works? I guess I'd like to know where that would be budgeted.
Okay.
Sounds like talking about a lot of polls the last time. I mean, I think they were talking about 41 polls or something. We're using up most of the available polls in the city just for Verizon, which was another problem about granting a monopoly. Anyway.
Raised lots of questions for us to get into next time. Anything else to add to our list?
Can I get a new cell phone?
All right. So the next item, did we vote on that postponement, Ms. Green?
Good question.
I don't remember if we did. I think we did.
You did.
Okay.
You did.
Good for us.
Next one is R1720, Annual Statement of Performance Standards. And I think where we left this is the city manager may be looking at outside help for next year's performance standards to make them a bit more detailed, working with the ICMA. But I think what we talked about last time, or maybe this is at Rules in Government, these meetings tend to blur together. But I think we were talking about wanting to get this to reflect, these standards need to, at the very least, I think, reflect the current organizational structure with the environmental reorganization, and also implement, and this, I guess, would be a point for Ms. Kyle too, is just to make sure that these standards fill in some of the gaps that we have that are currently in the standards. So again, there are no performance measures for the Forest Conservation Program, for plan and zoning, or the watershed restoration program for public works, and also the environmental enforcement program for public works. And I think we need to get some standards for those.
So in my last discussion with Ms. Farrow and the city manager, they were pretty swamped with a lot of other things, including our budget crisis, our COVID crisis, and so forth. And so I think the flavor I took away from them was they recognized that there needs to be another round of improvements that are at a more micro level, getting into whether some of these things are actually performance measures. But we were talking about getting some outside help. First, I suggest we look at what other municipalities were doing. Then we talked about potential ICMA help or other help. They felt that probably wasn't going to happen quickly, and I understand that. But my pushback, and I still have this, is it ought to at least be amended, this resolution, to reflect the current city structure. So take the Office of Environmental Policy out of the performance measures, as you just said, put those things that are germane still into some performance measures for the deputy city manager, the things that Racine does and so forth. And I think that was the extent of it, just to amend it to get it to reflect the current structure. I also, I do think that we need to make it more robust, but I'm willing to accept that we all have full agendas, and that might not be for this year, that might be for next year.
Yeah, so Ms. Scott, I guess some of the, just as an example, one of the holes I think that need to be filled are with the environmental enforcement component. And a lot of this we already report in one capacity or another to the state, which for these environmental programs, as you know, often authority we have to report to ultimately. But for the sediment control, environmental compliance, we already should be keeping track of the rate of inspections, and we have to submit to them the number of inspectors, the total amount in fines, those kind of standards. But I think the real question becomes, I guess we want to often, I think of, well, what standard do we want our staff? We most likely want to have our staff be held to a higher standard, not just the minimums in the state law. And I think that's, and so for the stormwater management program, well, I guess I'll go to the forest conservation program next. We also report to DNR about total forest that's cleared. But I think, at least for me, I think what I'd like to see for plan and zoning is something in there where they, we need to have these standards, I think, need to have also, I think, a good place to set some goals. And so are we, I don't know, we'd have to, I guess, staff would have to brainstorm about what kind of standards to put in there. But I think it has to do with how much forest potentially gets protected or cleared, and fee and lieu numbers and that kind of thing. That we could, I'll have to look up I did send an email to the city manager a couple months back with some ideas. I'll have to dig that up.
If you can send those to me, if you pull that up and send it to me, that'd be great. Yeah. No, I agree. This would be good for setting goals for both of these areas. And you did mention we do report to MDE on enforcement for our MS4 permit as far as sediment and erosion control. We do exactly how many inspectors, how many violations, which ones do we follow up on, fines, things like that.
Yeah, and I guess that might be an easier one to quantify into actual standards, in the sense that MDE may not even necessarily require this outright, but both their code and our code, for example, requires every inspections every 2 weeks of every project site that has a grading permit. So that's clearly a standard we have to hold to. But and this might be but we could always, for example, until it's changed in law, which I hope to do, but we could always set into our own internal policy goals of, well, if it's a site over an acre or 2 acres, then we want them to be inspected every week or something, and I don't see why we can't have standards that are more higher than what we even have in code. I don't know. That's, I guess, a question for the city, for City Manager Gerald as well. But I mean, what are your thoughts, Alderman Arnett, in terms of, you think we can set standards that are a bit higher than even the minimums we have in the code in this kind of a document?
I guess it's possible. I mean, it's more of a performance measure. That sounds to me like more of a code change than a performance measure, but I'd have to think about that a little bit more.
Yeah. So, Ms. Scott, we'd be happy to continue any of this discussion in the future.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to resolve.
I'm not sure about the performance measure part of it, whether or not you can do that. But Public Works Director Gerald, when he was Director Gerald, did set that policy for stormwater that went above and beyond what our code says. Yeah. So you could do it as a policy, statement if Director Johnson was so inclined.
Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah. You have to think more. We have to think more about some of the forest conservation standards. But I guess in terms of the performance, I think what the public and this committee would be interested in making sure is if using these to ensure that whatever policies we adopt are being implemented to their fullest extent. I think that's really ultimately the intent of the performance standards. And so in that sense, I don't think we have to go into, none of these performance standards are in a huge amount of detail, but I think we have a few basic ones about applying some of the large provisions of our recent code changes. I think that'd be good just to make sure that that staff is going in the direction that the council intends, I think, with these and administration. All right. Any other thoughts on this?
No?
All right. Well, I guess, do we need another motion to postpone?
Yes, I thought I had, but I move we
Maybe you did.
postpone getting some, we need to get some input from the city manager, probably assistant city manager, Lynn Farrow, to at least change the structure to recommend to reflect the current city structure.
All right. And I second that. All those in favor of postponing, please say aye.
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 It's been a long meeting for all the postponing we've
I
done.
know. All right. So a final item, just an update from the deputy city manager, and welcome in your
Yes.
new capacity here.
Congratulations.
You're muted.
All right, thank you very much. So I guess day 7 officially on the job. And so what I'm going to do is, I've already started doing this, is meet with each of the aldermen and women and talk to you about your environmental priorities, resilience, especially around resiliency and sustainability for your ward. And because what's important to one ward is very different to the next ward, and how they're impacted by climate change and sea level rise and other environmental factors, and what their community deems important. So I already have spoken to Fred and a little bit to Ellie, but I need to do that with each of you. And also do the same with the staff. So with directors of different departments, and as well as some of the mayor's staff, especially our African-American and Hispanic liaisons, and talk to them about their communities, what's important there, how to communicate best with them as well. So I'll be doing that in the next few weeks. And then continue, we have, of course, a draft resiliency plan. We have applied, the city's applied for federal funding through Department of Defense to work with the Naval Academy in Anne Arundel County on some resiliency initiatives. So that will feed into the resilience plan, but we need to finalize that this year and work on sustainability initiatives as well. So I'll be sitting down with the city manager and coming up with, and there's so much we could be doing already. So from this commission, I would ask that committee would ask that you think about, as a committee, what are your top priorities, not just from the environment, but thinking in terms of resiliency and sustainability as well, and feed that into me for my purposes of prioritization and planning and our overall plan for the city. And then we continue. So some types of initiatives we've been working on for a while is our greenhouse gas emission inventory. That was done initially in 2010. We had a consultant do that work. Racine Hodo, our environmental programs coordinator, has been working with Ann Stevenson from the Environmental Commission on pulling all the information and updating it. There's a lot of parameters and information that we have now, we track, that we did not in 2010. This also should be done most likely every 5 years and not 10 years. And we need to set a baseline this year. So that report will be drafted by the end of the year. We have all the information we need now. However, this was a huge undertaking for Racine and Ann to do on top of other staff work. I really think, and so we have not updated the community greenhouse gas emissions inventory that was also done by a consultant in 2010. So that would be the next inventory to do, but I really think we probably need the help of a consultant to do that. So I'll have to do some research on what companies are appropriate to do that kind of work. You'd have to look at the company who did it last time and how much they would charge. So I have an idea of what we would be requesting in the FY22 budget for that.
Sorry, can you say that last part again? I have a dog barking in the background.
So, yeah, I need to do some research. Can you hear me? Okay, I need to do some research into the type of companies that would be appropriate to do the community greenhouse gas emissions inventory, and then what the charges would be approximately, so we know what to ask for in next year's budget. Because it's a very time-consuming process, and I actually think the expertise from a company that is expert in doing this, does these kinds of projects all the time, would really behoove us.
Yeah, and I think we'll need to know, because I think it's for us, it's easier for us to get the metrics for the government emissions. And I think what would be important to know along with that would be what we can do with the information from the community. Like, why is that so important?
Right.
Because, I think when I did that for the city, for the community, that I think primarily basically just took information from DGE in terms of their electric usage. But it'd be interesting to see the community as a whole. And, I suppose in that sense, when we after building the solar farm, that does not only help government emissions, but theoretically that would help city emissions, reduce city emissions too.
Right.
But
so the city emissions, the city emissions inventory, as you know, only covered city buildings. So the community one is, even probably more important. And then it's a factor of what you do, as you're saying, what you do with that information. How do we educate our residents to reduce their carbon emissions? How do they become more energy efficient, and provide them with information where they can get discounts and tax credits, et cetera, by going solar or implementing other initiatives. I know BG&E and other companies will come in and for free and do an energy audit of your home. Many people are not aware of that, and they have recommendations they can make for energy savings in your home. So that one is probably even more important for the city as a whole to reduce our carbon footprint.
Yeah, and if you're asking about our priorities, and I think we should have that discussion, especially with Alderwoman Tierney here. But the one thing I think I'm sure we would all agree on is having to do with the impacts from sea level rise and climate change. And it's kind of hard to say until we see the resiliency report, the final report. We haven't even seen a draft yet from the one that Dan Neese and forget the woman's name who worked on that.
Joanne Throw.
I know that's being finalized, I think, by Plan and Zoning. I think
so what they did, their work was turned over to the city, and part of that is on hold because we are waiting to see what the grant, if we receive grant funding from DOD, and what initiatives would be highlighted in that work with that grant money. And that goes into the resiliency plan. But I need to get together with Sally and figure out how we're going to finalize this report and bring in some of the other factors that I've been working on.
Yeah, and for me, and I think again, for us, I think one of the big concerns is, or questions is at least that I have is does this report, the resiliency report, or does it actually look at what actions we need to take locally in terms of adapting to sea level rise? Like, because I'd like to ultimately, I think the city council needs to get something that really outlines, here are our vulnerable areas, which I guess we've already actually gotten reports on some of our vulnerabilities. But the next question is, what do we need to plan for? Ross has gotten to me too much with the fiscal, being a fiscal hawk here, but I need to get an idea of, I think we all need to get an idea of what do we need to install in the future. So I know we know downtown and Eastport have vulnerabilities. And we've heard some solutions for downtown, but we haven't heard any kind of solutions for Eastport. We haven't even looked at least to my knowledge, for example, my ward or Fred's ward and Ward 2 in terms of what areas, since we have coastline, what parts of those wards are going to have impacts? Is this going to impact maritime industry in my ward or some of the city assets down there? And I think, so again, I think we need to know what we need to plan for in the future, because right now I feel like without having that, we're kind of just dealing with whatever fire comes up immediately and kind of operating in the dark. So hopefully we'll get to that point.
So the draft resiliency plan does have some actions, but it envisioned doing some community outreach and to learn more about what the community wants. And so that part is really important, I think, before we can finalize it. It'll be in a draft form first. But our most pressing needs, obviously, when we should prioritize within that plan as well, are these kinds of things brought on by sea level rise, obviously. But in some wards, sea level rise is not really that impactful. Now, sometimes it's this, the frequency and intensity of storms are a factor because of flooding caused by stormwater. So some of the work we're doing to decrease the stormwater velocity and flow and allow it to sink in is important in some other wards. So it's not all about just the sea level rise. And also in some wards, it's extreme heat and extreme cold, and making sure that our, especially our public housing is appropriately designed and is functioning so that people are not left in the cold or in the heat, and also a backup for when the heat goes out. You know, how are we dealing with those situations? Other things are transportation. Whoops, hello?
You're on mute. You muted yourself.
Oh, okay. My screen went out. So another things are like sea level, and that's besides sea level rise and heat and cold and stormwater. There's also transportation corridors and how they were affected by sea level rise, and also the walkability of the city for purposes of getting to work, getting groceries. These are all resiliency kinds of issues that are, you know, people always think sea level rise and climate, but climate does drive a lot of other factors, including food deserts, you know, how people live, how they work, how do they get around. So there's a number of different areas we need to address within the city.
And Rob, I might point out, those were all points made by Eric Lashinsky last night when he did his presentation on the new comp plan. I would also tell you that, and I'm trying to remember the venue, I think it might have been Financial Advisory Commission, that David Gerald reported that the city county committees, subcommittees on the resiliency legislation have made their recommendations. So I think soon we're going to be, I hope soon we're going to be hearing something from the city about the Resiliency Funding Authority, but also I'm assuming that's going to advance our plans on resiliency across the board. I haven't heard mention of Dan Nees in months now. I don't know whether we're still working with him or not, or whether we really got anything from him or not, but I think that is something we need to know about. Yeah,
and I think the other part which we need to figure out is, and I think Ms. Guile, you brought us some good points, because I think we often focus on the big impacts like City Dock, but it could be as simple as people not being able to walk to their mailbox or walk to their cars. And that's where there are a lot of pieces of this I think we need to look at and figure out. And in terms, even with the Resilience Authority, you know, we have that approved, but the only really project we have that they need to deal with right now is City Dock. And again, I think we don't even know yet what projects we need to give to them. As an example, I think we need to look at our road inventory. We can, you can easily do a GIS-based analysis with topo analysis and everything, just to identify roadways that are going to be having, they may not be flooding now, but if we get the anticipated rise of sea level, are we going to have more nuisance flooding on certain roadways? Are we going to have to resolve that? That's all infrastructure costs we need to plan on. And the other aspect is related to development, and maybe this came up last night. I need to watch that meeting, but in terms of identifying low-lying areas, our floodplain is going to be expanding. So do we really want to be permitting development projects in certain areas when most likely that cost is going to come back to the city in terms of either making sure their homes don't flood, making sure the roadways don't flood if they're turned over to us? You know, I think maybe we need an automatic law where if a roadway is in a floodplain and anticipated to be in a, who knows, a sea level rise flood area, anticipated flood area, then we can't accept that road unless it's at a certain elevation, because again, that cost is going to come back to the taxpayer. So these are all things that we'll need to look at in the future. Or are there certain communities like, well, Eastport's just, I don't even know where to begin with that. I'd be really nervous, Alderman Arnett, because it's a really tough nut to crack there in terms of you have all these street end parks and properties that are going to be flooding, and it's just, do we need to build a seawall around the entire Eastport, or are there other alternatives? And that's where,
I agree that there's things that we have to address right away, and the flooding is sea level rise are a big part of that. But Eric did a really great job on housing, but he didn't address the Dewey requirements for areas where we're flooding, et cetera. I know we've talked about that. Those are important points. What he did a really good job of pointing out was our dearth of what he called middle housing, and that would be housing that is maybe townhouses or duplexes or triplexes or fourplexes, apartments, and the fact that the city population the age is rising, and we have a lot of retirees, people 65 and up, but it's decreasing when if you look at his graphs for between 18 and 20, and then 20 to 24. I have a 23-year-old who cannot find anywhere even to rent in the city. I know DeJuan Gay has had a really hard time finding a place to live in the city as well. And I think that if we really want a resilient city, we have to have diverse people and backgrounds, but also in age groups. And if you want a vibrant city, you need to be able to include your entry-level workforce and workforce housing. We've talked about it before about having our emergency responders, our police and fire, be able to live close by to the city and not super far away.
Well, but Jackie, first of all, I want to challenge that, and I'm going to challenge it with Eric. We keep hearing this statement, if we want a resilient city, but I haven't seen the data on that. And I do know, because Sheila and I worked on trying to find workforce housing for police and fire, they don't want to live in the city. And so we're struggling to find this housing for them. In fact, they often don't want to live in the state. They want to live where it's cheap. They don't want to live on this side of the bridge. So I wish we would focus in on the real demand and the real market forces before we go off on this tangent of filling what Eric called the great middle. But Eric also did reflect that we are a largely built environment.
Yes.
Unless we're going to talk about starting to tear things down and rebuild, and good luck with that. I'm not sure how realistic some of this planning is, and it's been my gripe. My gripe is that the workforce housing seems to deny or not acknowledge that there is a marketplace, and the marketplace determines the kind of housing you're going to get and where it's going to be. And it's only if government intervenes with incentives and rules that you can change that. And
I agree with that entirely. I think the marketplace dictates it, and it's whether the city's going to, in their zoning work, put aside areas where they're going to give incentives for workforce housing. I completely agree with that. But there is, for younger people coming in and certain people, certain incomes, there's really no place to live close by. They would rather not have a car and be able to walk to work, to whatever. And that doesn't exist right now. But Eric did mention development opportunities like using above retail on Main Street and other areas, using, he didn't use the word incentives, but whether we start revamping some of those above the retail shops on Main Street and other streets for apartments, condos, et cetera. And I've always, looked at the Chinkapin Round Road area, and I don't know how realistic it is to go above some of those buildings as well. There's a certain segment of the population, I know young people again, that would like to live in a kind of light industry area. There's a lot of gyms back there, near the arts district, that sort of thing. Don't know how realistic that is. Those are privately owned buildings, but perhaps incentives would work there as well.
Well,
and it would that area needs some beautification anyway.
Oh yeah, and the whole West Street corridor too.
They need some trees. They need some green infrastructure there.
I think Rhonda would agree with that.
They're clearly planning issues and initiatives, and I think that it's going to have to be part of the comp plan. The city does have a huge parcel that is coming online over at the Spa Road facility. We need to find out if that's habitable space because of the incinerator being there. But I've often thought that is where we can really put our money where our mouth is and say, when this is redeveloped, this is the kind of housing that needs to go there. That is actually pretty near in, and it's also near all the facilities at Maryland Hall and so forth. I know one plan had the notion of a high-rise apartment there with the first couple of floors being artist facilities, and it was specifically geared towards providing habitat for artists and so on.
Right.
But I think that we need to be realistic about the number of opportunities we have in a built environment. And that whole accessory dwelling unit adventure that we had, I think just was not well thought out, very misguided, and really is, for my ward, part of a cultural warfare. I mean, it was part of a taking on the part of people who bought because they wanted to live in single family areas, and to have a wholesale taking of all of the single family areas in the city, except for very small parcels, and even that could go away, is a pretty fundamental socioeconomic change that shouldn't just have been done as lightly as that legislation.
Now, if we talk too much about ADUs, we're definitely going to run over on this meeting.
Yeah, no, I don't want to talk about them at all. I hope that's behind us, but I do want to talk about affordable housing. I think that is a valid, valuable thing. And I do want to know more about this vibrant communities needing to have all of the spectrum filled from lowest economic, socioeconomic to the highest socioeconomic, and how that gets adjudicated. And I think that it really only can happen if the government intervenes in market forces. Otherwise, who in their right mind would sell a parcel to a low-income housing when they can sell it to a multi-million-dollar housing unit? It just doesn't make economic sense. But that's for economic matters and rules in city government.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to update us on, Ms. Golub? You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, so those are the main points, but I just let you know that I was contacted by SP Parking, and they are interested in EV charging and several other lots in Annapolis. So I'm working with BG on that as well to give us the infrastructure to support that. And let's see. And then one of the projects, we have a number of restoration projects going on. A lot of not-for-profits have applied for funding through the money that the city has put up through the Chesapeake Bay Trust, but also through DNR and other groups. And one that we're working on, we're trying to coordinate, is Hawkins Cove. Spa Creek Conservancy has put in for funding there to improve Hawkins Cove with the living shoreline, and also some of the other work they did coming down from the HACA property. But now Shearwater Condominium up to the right on Hawkins Cove is interested in some stormwater improvements and water access. And the mayor has a vision for incorporating a beach area and public access there and on the water, and tying it over to the Truxton Park Trail system. And I've talked to the trust about all of this. They're very excited, and they want to coordinate all of these efforts and have a more comprehensive, holistic look to it to make it like a nice showcase area where residents from that area, especially the lower income communities, will be able to launch a kayak, fish there. It's not right now that area, if you've ever been down there, it looks like a mud flat. It's not even safe for kids to get in that area. They probably get stuck in the mud. So we're looking at something more comprehensive than just the Living Shoreline project there. It could be a really nice area. And also St. Mary's is still going forward. They're going through the rounds with the Historic Preservation Commission for the largest living shoreline that would exist in the city of Annapolis if approved. They have a grant. St. Mary's has a grant for the designed the design portion, and they're trying to get through the historic preservation process with that before they could apply for build money.
Yeah, and I spoke with Karen Brown from Historic Annapolis about that a little bit, the St. Mary's Shoreline, and she expressed how there was great concern from the Historic Preservation Commission. But I think it would be benefit, and what I mentioned to her, and I haven't had a chance to do any of it, but it's on my list. But try to get like a meeting together of the Historic Preservation Commission and the Environmental Commission, just so they can hear, not for a debate, but just for them to hear each other out, so they can at least hear where the other side is coming from, and hopefully they can find a nice compromise.
Right. And I actually just this morning, I spoke with DNR about this project, and they will be meeting with Roberta and John Tower as a pre-meeting before the next hearing, which is in December before the commission. And I told them that I would be happy to work with them, make sure that the environmental and resiliency portion of this project is highlighted, and hear from staff what we think is important as well. So I will attend those commission hearing meetings and the meetings they have set up with our historic preservation staff to try to facilitate some of those conversations, exactly what you're talking about. Make sure that they hear those concerns. And I think that according to DNR, they think that they've addressed a lot of the concerns of the commission.
Okay, excellent. Well, very good. Well, thank you for the updates. And is there anything else for Ms.
No, I
Howard?
wanted to go back to doing with, it's kind of fell apart over the summer with COVID, was providing you with a written update, highlight areas we're working in, and then update you monthly on that. I'll provide the same to the Environmental Commission.
Yeah.
So you have it writing ahead of time of your committee meetings.
I don't know whether a spreadsheet form like Dr. Nash uses.
Yeah.
I think that would be great. And actually, it was invented by Frank Biba when he was working in DNAP. So
Yeah.
That would be.
So you may recall that I provided you with that several times earlier this year, and I'll go back to doing that for this new position as well.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
All right. So anything else for the good of the order?
Tune in to the Board of Appeals meeting tonight. It should be a hot tamale.
I'll leave that. Oh, wait. Okay. I'll leave that up to you.
Thank you. I move we adjourn.
All right. I'll second that. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Green, do you need anything else from us?